What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Modern Warfare. And in today's episode, we're finally going to be wrapping up the shotgun category, uncovering the VLK Rogue. And jumping right into it, let's kick it off with damage. Just like with all of the other shotguns in Modern Warfare, shotguns deal a base amount of damage per pellet depending on the range. However, we also get a pretty significant damage boost for every 2 pellets that hit our target. On top of that, there is a very small boost to headshot damage with shotguns, but this is generally a negligible boost, and therefore aiming for the head generally isn't going to be worth it for you. Now, when it comes to the VLK Rogue specifically, up close, we deal over 300 damage. That's the highest amount of health I can set in a custom game, and it will be a one-shot kill at really close ranges if all of the pellets hit. And then at the longest ranges that you can still get a hit with this gun, assuming only 1 pellet hits, you're dealing 14 damage. Now, immediately when I saw this 300 damage, I was thinking, holy crap, this is going to be overpowered in Warzone, because in Warzone, you can only have 250 health, or effectively 250 health, with full health and armor. However, I tested it in Warzone, and you only deal 204 damage in Warzone, just like with basically all of the other shotguns. So it's not completely overpowered in Warzone due to this damage reduction, but it's still pretty decent because it's only going to take you 2 shots to kill against a fully armored enemy up close. As for a rate of fire though, this is actually pretty solid for a pump action at 147 rounds per minute. Now, it's not nearly as fast as an Origin 12, but it is significantly faster than the Model 680 for instance. And what this means for our time to kill value is if we do require a second shot to kill, it's going to take us 409 milliseconds, which is very slow compared to the average full auto gun in this game. However, in something like Warzone, if you are dealing with an armored enemy, you're actually killing people quite fast. Now, moving on to our ranges, our one-shot kill potential with the VLK Rogue in core game modes is 5.3 meters, which isn't exceptional by any means, but it is noticeably better than the Origin 12, for instance. Then after that, I found out that there's basically a guaranteed 2-shot kill potential out to 12 meters. So if you're just hip firing towards your enemy and not even landing very many pellets, you can still get a very consistent 2-shot kill out to 12 meters. And then finally, our maximum hit potential with the VLK Rogue is 26 meters. Taking this a step further, let's have a look at the muzzle attachments that impact our ranges. With the Forge Tac Marauder, this actually has a great increase to our ranges. So it's definitely a recommended attachment. There are a lot of benefits to this, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the video. Then with the monolithic suppressor, we do get a very slight increase to our one-shot kill potential, but nothing too crazy. And then finally with the choke, there is a negligible increase here, but again, we'll look at the choke in more detail later because it has other benefits attached to it. Next up, I also wanted to add the slug ranges as well as the Dragon's Breath ranges, and as you can see with the slug, as long as you're hitting an upper torso shot, you get an incredible one-shot kill potential. But it is fairly inconsistent, and therefore I personally don't really like it. And then with Dragon's Breath, you actually get a very consistent one-shot kill out to about 12 meters, which is awesome. So Dragon's Breath is great with the VLK, however, that does reduce your maximum hit potential by a noticeable amount. Moving on to hipfire, as you can see here, the VLK Rogue is just under the best in the shotgun category. It's not quite as good as the 725 or the Model 680, but it's pretty decent. And the next thing I want to have a look at here is our spread. And on the left, we've got our base hipfire spread with no attachments, and then on the right, I've got our base aim down sight spread, assuming we have no attachments. And you can see here that it tightens up a little bit when you aim down sight, but not by a really significant margin, unlike some of the other shotguns. Then I want to have a look at our aim down sight time, which is 284 milliseconds, which is actually the fastest in the shotgun category. As for sprint out time, this is very normal for shotguns at 284 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 400 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. Our magazine capacity is 8 rounds with 16 in reserve, which is very solid for a shotgun. And then our standard reload add time is 1.9 seconds, which is a little bit on the slow side, but not too terrible. However, if we did want to speed that up, you could use sleight of hand, which will cut that down to 1.44 seconds, which is definitely more tolerable, but it's not a massive boost by any means. Now finally, for base stats, our base movement speed is 97.5%, which is really great, and our aim down sight stray speed is very fast for Modern Warfare at least, at 69%. And that pretty much covers it for the base stats without attachments on the VLK Rogue. However, it does have a fair number of unique attachments, so let's hop into them and kick it off with the barrel attachments. The first barrel we have access to is the VLK SAR barrel, and with this one, we get an increase to our damage range, and based on my testing, this increases your one-shot kill potential to 6.1 meters, and our total maximum hit potential is increased to 30 meters. So both of these are a pretty nice boost. Additionally, this tightens up your pellet spread, which if we have a look at it right here, you can see that it is a noticeably better pellet spread, so you're going to be able to hit those pellets more consistently at those longer ranges, which is excellent. However, we've got a few cons attached to this as well. The first one is our aim down sight time is slowed down by 3 frames at 60 FPS, so it's now 334 milliseconds, and our overall movement speed is reduced by quite a bit at 4%. But this brings us to our second barrel, and this is the 6-inch Revolt barrel. And with this one, we actually get an improved aim down sight time at 234 milliseconds, which is a really nice improvement. And our overall movement speed is increased by 1.5%, which is a fairly small boost, but it is a boost nonetheless. Another thing with this barrel that's stated as a pro, but generally is a con unless you play hardcore game modes, our pellet spread is wider, which as you can see here, it is noticeably wider, so you're going to get less consistent pellet hits with this. And on top of that, it appears all of our damage ranges are reduced by 15%. So overall, not a bad barrel if you're looking for extra speed and handling and mobility, but it will definitely hurt your killing potential. But finally, this leaves us with the 16-inch Warlord barrel, and with this one, we get about a 10% increase to our one-shot kill range, and only about a 7.5% increase to our maximum hit potential, but overall, not a bad little boost there. Then we get noticeably tighter pellet spread. We actually get a very nice tight pellet spread with the 16-inch barrel. And the only downside to this one is our aim down sight speed is reduced by just 1 frame at 60 FPS, so our new aim down sight time is 300 milliseconds. Overall, even though we don't get quite as much of a boost to our ranges as the first barrel, the SAR barrel, I actually prefer this one due to the fact that it has much fewer downsides to it. But this brings us into the next attachment I wanted to have a look at, and this is the choke attachment, which says that it improves your damage range, but the improvement to your one-shot kill potential is negligible. There's maybe like half a meter difference at most. You probably will never run into a situation where that matters anyway. And even our maximum range is only increased by about 4%, which is very minimal. The main boost to this, though, is we do get noticeably tighter pellet spread. We do get a great pellet spread with the choke attachment, so that's the huge upside. And the one stated downside is our aim down sight speed is supposed to be a little bit slower. However, at 60 FPS at least, there is no measurable change to this. So yeah, the choke is great for tightening up your pellet spread, but that's pretty much it. As for the next one, this is the Forge Tac Marauder Suppressor, and with this, it acts as a suppressor, which is great. You also get a great increase to your one-shot kill range. This is the biggest increase you can get from a single attachment at about 25%, which is awesome. And even our maximum hit potential, that's the biggest increase you can get. It's now 30 meters. On top of this, it states that you get a tighter pellet spread. Looking at it side by side, if anything, it looks maybe a little bit wider. But it's not significantly wider or anything. It's pretty much the same as not having an attachment. And then on top of this, we have these stated cons, which is a reduction to our aim down sight speed, and this is going to be 2 frames slower at 60 FPS. And then on top of this, our aim walking steadiness is reduced, but that really doesn't matter with shotguns unless you happen to be using slugs. Overall, despite the fact that you don't really get much of a tighter pellet spread, I would say this is the best muzzle attachment you can use for this shotgun, and honestly, it's probably even the best attachment overall that you could use with this shotgun. Even though the Troke gets a tighter pellet spread, so you're going to hit more pellets more consistently, within the ranges we're looking at with our one-shot kill potential, this isn't much of an issue, and therefore the Marauder is going to get you more consistent one-shot kills out to a longer range. But with that, it's time to move into the laser attachments, and the 1 milliwatt laser is nice because it helps a bit with our sprint out times. Our standard sprint out time is reduced down to 250 milliseconds, and our tactical sprint out time is cut down to 334 milliseconds, which is definitely a nice little boost, especially for a shotgun. However, if we did want to take this to the next level, we could use the 5 milliwatt laser, which has a significantly better impact on our sprint out times. As you can see there, it really cuts them down. And on top of this, our hipfire diameter is reduced by quite a noticeable amount, so we get a nice tight hipfire pellet spread, which is excellent. So I highly recommend the 5 milliwatt laser, but you do have to be aware that enemies will be able to see that laser anytime you either aren't sprinting or aren't aiming down sight. But this finally leaves us into the last set of attachments, and these are the magazine attachments. The first one is the 12-round extended mag, and with this one, the downsides are a loss to aim down sight speed, which, at 60 FPS at least, there is no measurable change here, so its effect is completely negligible at 60 FPS. And then our overall movement speed is reduced by 1.5%, which really isn't too bad of a decrease. As for the next magazine, this is a 4-round magazine, so we're actually cutting our capacity in half. However, this does have quite a few benefits attached to it. First up, our aim down sight speed is improved up to 250 milliseconds. Then our overall sprint out times, those are improved just a little bit, just by a few frames at 60 FPS. Then after that, our movement speed is boosted by 2.5%, which is a nice boost. And finally, our reload time is a little bit faster. Our standard reload time is 1.59 seconds, and our sleight of hand reload time is 1.19 seconds. And that pretty much covers it for the unique attachments on the VLK Rogue. One thing that's interesting about this shotgun is you have a lot of attachments that can boost your movement speed. And a lot of people have been claiming that with the VLK, if you stack all of the attachments that help with your movement speed, you can actually make the fastest gun in the entire game. And while you can get a crazy good movement speed at 105%, it's still not quite as fast as the fastest Uzi build, where you have the no stock attachment, the Merc foregrip, and the shortest barrel. So the VLK Rogue is almost the fastest with the right attachments, but it still doesn't beat out the Uzi. And that wraps it up for all of the stats that I wanted to cover for this shotgun. However, now it's time to move into a couple great attachment combinations that I really like using with this. And the first one I'm going to share here is with the Forge Tac Marauder, the 16-inch Warlord barrel, the 5mm laser, the no stock attachment, and the 12-round magazines. This one I find is just excellent for running around, hip firing basically all the time. You get a really nice tight pellet spread with this, as well as a very solid one-shot kill potential, but if you require the second shot, it's also not too bad. And it's got a decent amount of spammability with that 12-round mag. There's nothing too surprising here, it's pretty straightforward, but let's take that into an example class setup. With this, I've got a Renetti as my secondary, then I've got Double Time, Ghost, as well as Tune-Up, and the reason we're using Tune-Up is so I can get dead silence as often as possible, so I can flank my enemies and they won't be able to hear me stomping around like an elephant. Then after that, we've got the C4 as our lethal, and our tactical is a stun grenade. As for the second attachment combination that I like to run with the VLK Rogue, this is with the Dragon's Breath ammunition. And out of all the shotguns in the game that you can use Dragon's Breath on, I feel like this is the best one. So with this, we're once again using that Forge Tac Marauder. That is basically a must-have on this gun, assuming you have it unlocked. Then we're using a 1mW laser, and the reason we're using 1mW instead of 5mW is I actually don't want to tighten my hip spread up too much, because with Dragon's Breath, it's more so about just getting any pellets on target, and the tighter your pellet spread is, the more precise you have to be. So it's still going to help us a bit with our sprint out time without tightening up our pellet spread too much. But on top of that, we do have stipple grip tape to help a little bit more with our sprint out time alongside that 1mW laser, and we've got the no stock attachment to help with our movement speed. As far as the class setup, you can honestly just pop this into the previous class setup and it would be just as effective, so that's what I'd recommend with this one. And I'd say definitely give those Dragon's Breath rounds a try if you haven't tried them yet with the VLK Rogue. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the VLK Rogue shotgun. And that finally wraps it up for every one of the guns in the game. I'm finally caught up. I know it took a very long time. Of course, I will continue covering guns as they come out. And I'm toying around with the idea of doing some form of a gun guide with the crossbow. A lot of people have been requesting it, but it is a very complex sort of a thing and it doesn't behave like a normal gun, so I may or may not get to that at some point. Now, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I will of course leave a link to the playlist down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.